Call of Duty might have just killed Warzone with Season 4. The patch notes for Season 4 dropped this morning, and BR Solos was replaced by Casual Solos. Casual wasn't added, it was completely replaced. There is no more BR Solos as of tomorrow. We have only Casual Solos and Casual Quads going on. Is this the cause of war? Is this going to be the cause of the death of Warzone, or is this being looked at as a vaccine trying to save it and keep the game going? What's really killing Warzone? Well, in one word, it's SBMM. Look, everybody, regardless of skill, everybody is complaining about how sweaty Warzone is. Everybody. And it's sweaty for everyone because of SBMM. I made a video last year where I went through and I looked at all the numbers. I took every bit of information we had on player skill. I looked at all the leaks we had, all the data that was made available to us, everything from Warzone 1, and I put it all into a system, built an algorithm, and crunched the numbers. And the reality is, when you break it down, the best way to structure a Warzone lobby is to make it random, to have a random bell curve of skill, so that every game, sometimes you're at the top, sometimes you're at the bottom, sometimes you're right in the middle, and there's a variety of opportunities to play. And that is not only the best for good players and average players, but even the bad players are better off in random lobbies than in a strict matchmaking scenario like we have right now in Warzone. Why? Protected lobbies. The biggest problem we have in matchmaking is the existence of protected lobbies. So here's what happens. When you have a lobby in Warzone and you are going to protect a certain bracket, right? That means you're going to take a percentage of the player base and you're going to skim it off the bottom and say those people are not part of the general matchmaking. They are going to be in a separate matchmaking designed to protect them from from all the better players out there, which is great in theory. However, two things go on for those bad players. They're not allowed to get better, because if they do get better, they are going to find themselves kicked out of the protected bracket, and they're going to be thrown to the wolves with everybody else in the general matchmaking. That sort of shock does not do well for most players, especially if you're on the lower end of things. Think about it. You're playing the game, you're doing pretty well, and then all of a sudden, one day, without warning, everybody is hard. Every game is tough. You're getting slammed everywhere you go because you've gone from protected brackets to the traditional matchmaking. You are up against everybody else out there, and it's a very, very tough road, and it's going to drive a lot of people to quit. Those sort of experiences, everywhere you look, going from a protected environment out into the wild doesn't bear well. People don't stick around in that. So problem number one, if you graduate from protected brackets, the odds that you will stay on the game are reduced dramatically. Two, protected lobbies upset the pool of players for everybody else. When you're trimming the bottom percentage off of the general pool of matchmaking, whether it be 5%, 10%, 20%, as the game progresses, the number of players that number is constantly eating away, right? As either the worst of the players stop playing, which is typical, or they age out of protected brackets, and the protected bracket then has to expand because there's a new bottom tier, right? So as players leave, as the protected bracket continues to just gobble up the bottom, whatever percent of the player base is, it messes with the average skill that remains. So when you look at the average skill that remains outside of the protected bracket, the tendency is for everybody to experience a higher than expected competitive skill level, right? As you take away more of the bottom, everything gets condensed. You no longer have, each skill bracket is no longer like as representative as it should be, because you're going to have players of higher skills being forced into these lower brackets, or more commonly, lower players being shoved up a bracket to try and fill those lobbies at the top. So it ends up creating a bad experience, generally speaking, for everyone. And then players at the top who just are always going to be sweaty. They're always going to play sweaty, and they're always going to play against sweaty players because they're at the top of the SBMM system. They don't get any relief. There is no variety at the top of the SBMM system. In reality, those players, and we have seen this since day one, will constantly seek relief, whether it be for content creation, whether it be for their own peace of mind, whether it be because they want to just play with their friends. They will go to whatever lengths are required to break matchmaking and either get into a protected bracket or get out of the top bracket that they're in, which then upsets the balance of the brackets that they're pushed into. Okay? So nobody's winning in this. This system is broken and it doesn't work. This broken matchmaking system that we have today, it's not functional. It isn't achieving its goals. It isn't creating the retention. It isn't creating a good experience. And it's one of those things that really nobody walks away happy from. So what's the answer? Well, clearly they're trying something, but I want to look at Fortnite. In 2019, they added bots to Fortnite. And a lot of the press, a lot of the players, especially dedicated players, basically bemoaned this and they said, look, this is going to kill Fortnite. It's going to kill the game. No one wants it. It's not helpful. And what happened? Well, from then, for the next 5 years, they've added over 400 million players to the game. Clearly, it didn't kill the game. So let's look at what they're doing. When Fortnite has bots in its casual modes, it uses them to fill lobbies, to create, protected lobbies for players, for new players. So a new player or a bad player would see more bots that, in their matches than a higher skilled player who would see very few. Also, if the player count's low in whatever mode it is, bots are used to fill lobbies. How many times in Warzone did we have periods where you couldn't even fill a 100 player game, right? We would have a lot of matches in Urzikstan, some in Al Mazrah, where we couldn't get a full lobby. It just wasn't full. You would come. I have played Rebirth games where there's only 3 squads on the plane because for whatever reason, the matchmaking can't find players. There aren't enough players available at that moment, whatever the case may be. And those games are no fun either, right? It's no fun to be on a map with only 4 other players running around trying to play a BR. It's just not worth even playing the map. All right. So bots are used in Fortnite to make sure that we get a full lobby, that there's 100 players, there's enough people around that you can actually play through the game. Is it quite as competitive? Probably not. However, the way that they use the bots it works. It fills it. It provides a competitive experience, and it's a way to adjust the matchmaking without having to mess with the matchmaking the way that Warzone does. Now, I know they have SBMM going on and they have other stuff going on behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, using bots to fluff out a lobby, if they can't, for example, fill a mid-tier lobby, instead of grabbing every random high-skilled player who's currently looking for a match and shoving them in that lobby, unbalancing it, they can just fill it with bots and let it run. Provides a better experience overall for the vast majority of people than Call of Duty's scenario, where if a lobby is not filling on time, they will break the matchmaking and fill that lobby with whoever they can get their hands on, which might bring, low skilled players into high skill lobbies, high skilled players into low skill lobbies, where the lobby's unbalanced. It's not competitive. It's not enjoyable for most of the people in it. And at the end of the day, it's just not a good experience. So there are some utilitarian examples of how Fortnite and other games have used bots to balance lobbies in a way that doesn't require such strict SBMM. Now, for anybody who's put any time in the Call of Duty casual mode up to this point, you can look, and if you give an honest evaluation, and I have spectated plenty of matches, there's no apparent SBMM. It isn't like we have, it isn't the same as currently, where if you are playing at a certain skill level, you are just being socked with this incredibly strict matchmaking that basically turns it into a game of ranked without SR. All right. That's not good. It's not a good experience. So bots in Fortnite are a tool to balance the modes, to create a better game experience overall compared to how, say, Warzone does it, which doesn't seem to be making a good experience for anybody. I don't know of anybody who sits there and plays every day and goes, yeah, lobbies are great. I'm having a great time. I don't have any problems. All right. It's just not there. Most lobbies are sweaty. Okay. But what about ping? Just make it on ping and there won't be any problems. Well, it's not 2005. Ping-based lobbies, in theory, are great. Everybody has a low ping. It's a random lobby. Everybody has a great time. However, back in the day, we used distributed servers. So whenever somebody brings up the question of why aren't we just use ping, just go by ping. You can't do that. Certainly not in Warzone with 150 players. But you just can't do that in today's game anyways. Several reasons. One, with the distributed servers, that means that somebody in the match is the host. The game runs off of their connection. So if they don't have a great connection, everybody has a bad time except for them. Host advantage is what used to be called. And there are permanent disadvantages to everybody who is not the host, right? You are automatically behind the host. Okay. Now, when you look at how consolidated servers work, right, which is what we have now, right, dedicated servers, you cannot have a ping-based matchmaking system because then there's going to be players who will permanently be behind the eight ball, right? They will never have a good ping. Doesn't matter where the server is. So right now we have the problem of somebody can be close to a server. Like I'm close to the Bay Area server. And if I get to play on the Bay Area server, then I get about a 10 millisecond ping. That's very usable. If I get pulled to Texas, it's about 50 milliseconds, and that's noticeable. If I get pulled to Florida, it's like 80. All right. SBMM will yank me wherever in the country, or even out of the country sometimes, if it feels that that's the better lobby for me to be in based on my skill and performance. And it does that to everybody. In fact, the higher skilled you are, the worse it gets. Well, that's not good. But if you had a dedicated server and you were ping-based, then everybody has a win by their geographic location, right? And it's not like they can just sit here and just put servers anywhere. The kind of server farms that run these games, they are hundreds of millions of dollars to build and tens of millions of dollars a month to operate. The idea that Activision or Microsoft or somebody's going to build hundreds of these farms across the country or around the world so that people can play the game, at a low ping, it's ludicrous. It will never happen. If it did, the game would cost $300 up front and run $50 a month just to log on, much less have to buy blueprints. All right. So the idea that we're going to have enough servers so that everyone can just play on their ping, play based by ping, is not going to happen. But if we went back to distributed servers, look at the cheating environment that we're in now. Look how bad it is when Call of Duty controls the servers. Now, what happens if the server's controlled on somebody's PC? We can't even control whether or not that person's operating software they shouldn't be running on their PC, much less give them control over how the game runs. If we did that, cheats would just be mandatory. You would just be required to own them in order to play. And flying cars would be like yesterday's pipe dream, right? The game would be unplayable at all. Like there would be no point in playing it. It would be wrecked. So the idea that we can just switch over to a ping-based system is on its face, great idea. In reality, impossible. So there has to be a matchmaking system of some sort or another. But the problem is the overpowered matchmaking that we have now the SBMM, right? Or whatever Activision calls it, it just turns pubs into SR free ranked modes, which is not fun. It's not, it isn't the definition of fun the way that most people would define fun. All right. It's a chore at best, and it's darn near miserable for most. So, bots. Casual mode, while not using SBM like pubs, has the ability to balance lobbies, much like Fortnite, by adjusting the density of bots, adjusting the skill of bots, and generally creating a balance in the game. They can move I've shown in videos where they can move and teleport the bots around the map as needed, so they can adjust the flow of the game. Whether that's good or bad is another question for debate. But the system can create a more balanced flow to the game in a way that current SBMM just can't do. It also provides for the elimination of protected brackets. If the game balances it by how many bots they're going to put in the mode, and they say, well, you're going to get 120 bots because, you know, you're a bad player. We're going to put you in a randomly selected lobby with 120 bots. The odds that you will have an enjoyable time before you run into another human are pretty high. All right. The system works. And I think we see it working today with the casual mode, right? Most players have a very good time playing it. They have a net positive experience. Whether or not they enjoy killing the bots is another topic. However, the actual matchmaking driven experience is not the total net negative that you find in pubs, right? Most people can have a terrible time playing pubs, flip over to casual, and even if they don't win, they still can come out of it having an enjoyable time because the game isn't punishing them from start to finish. This is similar to how Modern Rivals is doing it. So Modern Rivals, it turns out, has bots just like Fortnite. And when you are on a losing streak, they actually stick you in a bot lobby. They literally hand you some feel-good plays, some easier lobbies, in a way that, to be honest, most people didn't notice until somebody would data mined it and figured it out. Most people just said, hey, you know, it's good. You win some, you lose some. Sometimes you win, you lose a bit, and then you start winning and it feels good. And then you go back to losing sometimes. And you go back and forth, and people tend to enjoy that better than just losing all the time. Everybody, when you look at the top 10 games being played right now, if they're competitive shooter games, everybody else making that top 10 has bots, right? Fortnite has bots. Modern Rivals has bots. Apex has been knocked out of the top 10 for for months now. You look at you just look at the games that are out there, and this is a method of controlling the game. So it's not surprising that Call of Duty is looking at this and going this route. It also provides a balanced approach to SBMM, right? You're not going to get punished for being a good player by being forced into these massively competitive ranked mode experiences. In a random lobby, if you are playing right now in an SBMM free lobby in casual mode, if you hop in, you could be a top 250 player and you will steamroll that lobby for sure. But honestly, how much different is that than getting into a protected bracket lobby? In fact, you don't end up punishing bad players because you're not getting into you're not able to two box into a protected lobby because there is no such thing, right? It's not balanced in that way. And I think if they are able to take a better approach to how they build lobbies, because they can use bots to fill them, at the end of the day, it's going to make pubs a better experience for the vast majority of players. Will everybody be happy? Of course not. Nobody's always happy. Everybody's going to complain. This is Call of Duty. It's what we do. There's something to complain about. However, SBMM is obviously the biggest detriment to this game. It is the worst part of this game. It is the thing that every single player of every skill level in the game suffers from. It hurts everybody. And so if this is their way of fixing that, so we don't have to deal with SBMM screwing up everybody's games, At the end of the day, it's probably a net positive, and it's probably a way to improve the experience of unranked matches in Warzone. Will they do that? I don't know. Their track record's a little sketch. They might just turn everything casual mode and make it boring as hell. I don't know what they're going to do. But I've looked at other games, and when you look around and you see what other games are doing and how they're solving the same problems that Call of Duty has, bots are an essential function. And for the vast majority of people, they don't know, and most of them don't care. And I think that's what Call of Duty, an approach that Call of Duty needs to kind of entertain at least, because if they keep cranking up the SBMM and forcing that down our throats, this game is definitely not going to make it. But I know you disagree. Please put it in the comments. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you on the next one.